Good evening, and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Michael Romano, and I'm a partner with the national CPA firm McGladrey. McGladrey is a leading provider of assurance, tax, and consulting services focusing on the middle market. And my role with McGladrey is the head partner in charge of the life science practice of the firm here in the Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey markets. I want to remind our viewers that from time to time financial issues relating to life sciences or healthcare matters or companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may be dated. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. And before we get started tonight, I'm going to field a question from one of our viewers. Mary Lewis is asking from Ardmore, when you buy a business, what are some of the key items to look for in the financial history of that business? So I'm assuming perhaps you might be considering a small business, Mary. So one of the key items you look for is definitely you want to look at the financial statements of that business. You want to look at the balance sheet and the P&L and see if you can see some of the historical trends of that business, what kind of revenues or profits or cash flow are coming into the business, and what kind of profits the business is generating. If you focus on cash and you basically can see the cash coming in and the cash going out, and can reconcile that cash or have a professional accountant or CPA help you see that the cash has been reconciled to the bank information, that should give you a pretty good indication of whether the business is making money or not. The other thing you always want to look at is you want to consult the tax returns of the business. Take a look at the prior year tax returns to see what profit or loss has been disclosed to the taxing authorities. So these are just a couple of the items you might want to consider looking at, but I would suggest that you consult a professional, a tax advisor or a CPA to help you do some analysis on the business. So with that, if our viewers out there would like to send questions to Money Matters, here is how you do that and how your questions can be answered on a future broadcast.
money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our hosts and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
So I'm pleased to have with me this evening here my co-host Mike Verrill. Mike is a business development director with McGladrey, and he also serves on the board of directors for Montgomery County Development Corporation, where he helps guide the strategy and direction for furthering the business environment to the local community. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, would you like to take a minute or two to introduce yourself and tell the audience some of the things that you've been up to lately?
Sure. As a Director of Business Development for McGladrey, I have responsibility for driving market penetration in the Philadelphia region. With McGladrey, we offer a global firm experience with a very local market delivery. It's been very exciting for me working with many of the middle market businesses that make up the Philadelphia region and really helping them tie into the resources of McGladrey that really help them grow. With my appointment to the board of the Montgomery County Development Corp, we've been working really as a public-private agency under the Commerce Department for the county, as really trying to enhance the voice of the business in the county. We see a real need for that, allowing business owners to connect with county officials to help drive the issues that help businesses grow. One of the things from a life sciences standpoint that we've been able to do is connect life science companies, a lot of companies actually looking at the county because of the many resources that we have from a facility standpoint. Some of the larger pharmaceutical firms, companies that have downsized, have left some significant lab type space, for instance, that many life sciences companies looking at the region can utilize. So Montgomery County Development Corp is helping them connect with those opportunities as well.
Sounds interesting. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Both of us obviously came from Fesnac, merged into McGladrey at the first of the year. Why don't you give me a little bit of update? As you said, you're now heading up the life sciences practice for the local market here. Why don't you give me a little bit of insight into that and what kind of opportunities that's created for you?
Sure, Mike. So I think it's a very exciting time to be leading the life science practice for McGladrey here in Pennsylvania and Southern Jersey. As you know, and we're going to talk with our guest here in a minute, the life science community is very dynamic. There's a lot of change going on in the community. There's consolidation. There's disruptive technology. So with all these changes and disruption in the industry, that creates lots of opportunities for life science companies. And for startups and for entrepreneurs to start and launch new companies. So McGladrey really is focused on helping these emerging growth and startup phase type companies right through to middle market companies that are producing significant revenues and profits. So my role really is to keep my ear to the street and really understand what's going on in the dynamics of the market, and bring to bear the breadth and depth of the resources that McGladrey has to offer to be that first choice advisor and really help our clients succeed in the market. So I really enjoy it. I get to meet entrepreneurs and lots of great people doing interesting things, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and so I'm having a lot of fun with it, enjoying it.
Sounds like we're both having a great positive experience with the new firm.
So with that, speaking of entrepreneurial spirit and successful life science startups, I'd like to introduce to you tonight our very special guest, Dr. Todd Johnson. So just a few brief words on his background. Dr. Johnson is a veteran in the industry with over 20 years of experience as a healthcare visionary entrepreneur. Todd currently serves as the president and CEO of two local ventures, Cytovast and Noble. We'll get into a little bit more detail about each of these entrepreneurial ventures in just a few minutes. And he also serves as a venture partner at Ampersand Ventures, a leading life science investor based in the Boston area. Todd's pharma experience encompassed roles with both Abbott Labs and MDS Pharma. And before MDS, he had spent some time in a consultant capacity with McKinsey & Company. So he's got lots of years of life science experience, both big pharma and entrepreneurial startups. He has his MD from the University of Pennsylvania and MBA from Wharton. So it is my pleasure to welcome Todd to our show this evening.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks very much.
So with that, I'd like to get into our question and answer. I'd love to hear about what's going on for you. You started out on a traditional educational path for your doctorate in medicine, but you left midway through that to start a company. So Todd, can you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial bug and what drove you to take a risk like that early on in your career?
Yeah, sure, Mike. And just before we get started, one correction. I'm no longer with Ampersand Ventures.
Oh, I apologize for that.
So my interest in entrepreneurship goes back a long way. As a kid, I was always interested in helping other people and having real positive impact in the world around me. And I think that as I got into medical school, I found that medicine was a great way to have a positive impact on people and their lives and their health. And when I started to see digital health emerging and the ability to use all of the information that we're collecting through new modes of information technology, I got very excited about the impact that we could have on a broader population setting. And so that's what's really got me right now from and fueling my entrepreneurial bug.
You've had a number of entrepreneurial roles, both incubating startups and then working with existing companies.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what makes these new challenges or opportunities that you're working with different that with Noble and Cytovast.
Well, so I have in my career I've worked across big companies and small startup companies and a number of roles in between, and I think that. So I think what's different about what I'm doing now, and the reason why I came back to the small company and startup environment is the ability to make positive change quickly. It's difficult to get big companies to innovate, and at the time about 3 or 4 years ago, I was at Abbott Labs. I was head of new product development for their pharmaceuticals group. I was having a great time, but I got bitten by this feeling that there was so much more that we could do, given the emergence of electronic medical records and the Affordable Care Act driving the widespread adoption of EMR. And so I left Abbott to pursue those opportunities because you can move much faster as a smaller company.
And specifically, that's the company Noble that you're working with now, correct?
Well, that's right. I mean, Noble is so Noble is a technology company that's helping healthcare providers to more efficiently and effectively gather information from patients at the time of care. And that information can lead to, and oftentimes does lead to, identification of new health risks. The data shows that 45% of patient health risks go unidentified. And
wow,
therefore,
45%.
45%.
That's a huge metric.
And that drives estimates published in JAMA a couple of years ago indicate that drives about $260 billion in additional costs in the American healthcare system per year. And
Wow,
so that problem is driving now a huge growth in healthcare data analytics. And so Noble's oriented toward capturing more of that information. Information that in a doctor's office, I mean, we can't assume that a doctor or a nurse can screen every patient for every risk. And I mean, there was a study recently that indicated it would take about 21 hours per patient per visit for a doctor or a nurse to talk to a patient about all of those recommended screenings. Instead, we encapsulate a number of those questions. Of course, we can't do it all, but we encapsulate a number of those questions into the 10 to 20 minutes that a patient spends waiting alone in the exam room. And so before the doctor walks in, the patient's interacted with our technology product, Theo, on an iPad, and Theo is gathering that health risk information and communicating it then to the provider who can do the right things then to address them and help to manage those risks for the patient's health.
Tell our viewers what that's the core product for Noble, Theo. Tell the viewers what that stands for, and then talk about some of the success you've had so far. I mean, this is a real product that's been in use in several medical environments, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Mike. So Theo stands for Technology for Healthcare Engagement Outcomes, and that outcomes is a very important piece of this. We're actually using Theo to tie a patient's experience with the iPad to true changes in their state of health, and we can map it back to the percentage of patients who are hospitalized later in the year for flu, based on whether or not they got the flu vaccine and whether that risk was identified. We can we're using it at CHOP now to increase the number of patients who opt in to HPV vaccination, which is, as you know, prevents cancer later in life. So the real focus is on outcomes and tying this digital health intervention to true patient health outcomes. Yeah.
I'm just curious, Todd, is there engagement between the patient and the product, Theo, after they leave the doctor's office?
Yes. And
how does that work?
So Theo can capture information from the patients on an opt-in basis that helps the patient to be reminded of future medical needs. So if I take, for example, HPV vaccination, Theo can help the patient to make the decision of whether or not they want to initiate vaccination. But it's a big problem in the industry getting the patient to come back for the second and or the third dose. Mm-hmm. And so Theo can interact with patients, send them a text message or an email reminding them to come back. That's just one simple example. There are many other cases in which Theo can identify that a patient may be progressing toward diabetes. And we can refer that patient. Theo can then enroll that patient into programs that the patient continues at home or at work, et cetera, to ensure that they're doing the right things from the standpoint of diet and exercise, potentially medications to prevent the progression of their diabetes.
And is the data that the Theo is capturing when the patient is sitting in the waiting room for that 10 or 20 minutes, is that then acted upon real time, like when the patient then walks into the the room with the doctor, so it is real time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So and it does so in two different ways. One is Theo can tell the electronic medical record, remind the doctor or the nurse to do this. So put this into the to-do queue. Theo can also send secure text message alerts based on risks it identifies, if there's an urgent risk that's identified that needs to be addressed, before the patient leaves the exam room. We can securely text message that to a provider and make sure that risk make sure that patient gets the knowledge or the attention they need.
And has there been much concern or any kind of feedback from the patients about HIPAA or security about the information? And, how does that work?
Yeah, so all the information that we store from patients is 100% secure and HIPAA stored in HIPAA compliant server, and
right.
And we stored in a de-identified manner, and so we have not had any concerns about that or any. We take care of those concerns to make
right.
sure that our clients and the patients don't have to.
And is the feedback from doctors been that this is time saving for them, or what's their reaction? Because that's going to drive a lot of the.
It's a time saver. It increases clinical quality. Many of the quality measures that Medicare and Medicaid track and are trying to make sure that we're driving in the healthcare industry relate back to identification of risk and making sure those risks get addressed. And so the docs love it from that point of view. They also they get good knowledge about their patients that they don't otherwise have. And everything, Theo asks questions about obviously health topics, but they can also get some useful information that isn't typically part of a doctor-patient discussion. Do you wear a seatbelt every day? Do you have someone who lives with you at home who can help you in the event of an emergency? It's that what we call ancillary patient data that's also very helpful to docs in determining the care and what they need to do to help patients address their risk.
So thanks for sharing that. I would like to possibly circle back around and maybe talk about sort of the business model. But before that, I wanted to maybe turn our attention a little bit to the funding. I know that you've shared that Safeguard Scientific has funded the startup of Theo, and that you will be going, I believe, for a subsequent round. I'm not sure at what timing in the future, but I'd like to hear a little bit about the path that you've taken to secure that round of funding with Safeguard, and maybe a little bit about some of the next steps for what you see from a funding perspective to continue the growth of Noble and of the product and maybe future products.
Yeah, well, Safeguard is I would call them the anchor or one of the anchor venture capitalists in the Philadelphia area. And I think that they heard about what we were building with Theo early on and got excited by the idea, got excited by the opportunity. We were working closely with and continue to work very closely with a strategic partner, which is a company called GenCare. It's a Humana's accountable care organization kind of platform, and I think that the Safeguard guys saw that as, okay, this is a company with a solid business idea, with a growing market and a growing need, a very present need today, and with a strategic partner that can help us to get it there. So I think those were the critical driving factors for Safeguard making their investment. I think we are positioning the company to raise a Series A round next year, and we're in the process of getting a number of companies from the Philadelphia area, a number of the larger healthcare institutions in Philadelphia on board. I mentioned CHOP already.
Mm-hmm.
but Penn and others as well coming on board using the platform. And as we really show some growth here over the next several months, we'll be going out and doing another fundraising round.
And when you say some of those partners coming on board, do you mean potentially some of the venture arms? Because now those organizations, some of them have venture arms to fund startups like this, or I'm not sure if that's what you meant, or maybe venture capital or additional venture capital.
Well, I was referring to them using the tool operationally, as coming on board as clients. But
okay.
But we're as we go out for our Series A financing, we'll be looking at strategic investment options for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I don't know if this jumps in too much, but in all these equations, especially when investors are looking at this, it's a three-part equation, right? It's the provider, it's the patient, and then of course it's the payer. You haven't talked about the payer at all. What's their role in this? How do they react to this? Or
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the Affordable Care Act really has been extremely disruptive to healthcare delivery, but also to the payers, to the health insurance industry. I think that I think that many of the payers are trying to figure out how they can survive and how they can grow under the new system. And we have had a number of meetings with large insurers. I mentioned Humana earlier. Humana's been very supportive of the work that we've been doing, and we're now looking to increase their involvement and involvement from other payers as well. We've had discussions with a number of payers in the area, including some of the innovator ACO payer models here in the area, and it was just announced last week that Humana is also coming to this area in the Doylestown Healthcare Partners Group. So I think that we're going to see our business model growing from working or thinking about our client as the provider to our thinking about our client as the provider and the payer as well.
Interesting.
And we haven't talked much about your other venture, Cytovas, but I know from talking with you previously that the funding experience that you've had with Noble and with Safeguard Scientific was very different from the way that you started and launched, and the funding experience that you've had with Cytovas, which was, let's say, would be a very non-traditional type funding with the AHA and their accelerator program. Could you maybe talk a little bit about some of the similarities or differences of those two sort of funding experiences for the benefit of the audience?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So first I'll say Cytovas is a life sciences company. Cytovas is an innovator diagnostics company. We like to call it a precision diagnostics company. It's building more accurate clinical tests that will enable doctors to better understand a patient's risk of disease or their disease itself and how it's progressing, and or the patient's response to treatment. And so personalized medicine is, we believe, is the future. And in order for us to personalize treatments for patients, we're going to need more precise diagnostics that tell us, that give us more information about the individual. Cytovas is going to be an important player driving that market. Differences in funding routes. You're right. Cytovas has been able to pursue a very non-traditional path to funding. It's well funded today. It has been funded through first the American Heart Association's Accelerator Fund, which was a remarkable stamp of approval from a great organization that's very well known. And really focused on the same mission that aligns to Cytovas's initial focus, which is cardiovascular disease. But Cytovas has also received money from the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, and Becton Dickinson. And so through those three entities, the company has really been able to grow and thrive and accelerate its development.
Can you just expand a little bit upon the interest level of the AHA? Like, I know Cytovast is a diagnostic company, but sort of the tie-in maybe with their mission, as an organization?
Yeah, well, I mean, the AHA's mission is to dramatically reduce cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular disease-related deaths in the U.S., and they have a goal of driving I think it's a 20% reduction by 2020. I mean, it's an enormous undertaking. Cytovast's first test, the vascular health profile, we believe, and our early study results show that we can, with a remarkable degree of accuracy, predict a patient's risk of a heart attack or a stroke within a 4-year period. And so if we can identify those patients at highest risk of a heart attack or a stroke, we can guide their medical treatment. We know who to focus on more closely. And I believe that that in time we'll be able to really deliver more, to guide the delivery of personalized treatments to those patients to prevent heart attack and stroke, and to help the AHA achieve its mission of its 20% reduction.
That's great. That's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. I just thought maybe you could take a second. I'm sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs with phenomenal ideas in technology and therapeutics and diagnostics in the life sciences space, but you've been very successful sourcing funding for your entrepreneurial ideas. Any tips, or is there something you can share with the audience that maybe is something that somebody could clue into that might help them to kind of move the needle forward when it comes to funding?
Yeah, sure. I would say when it comes to funding, always never underestimate the amount of time it will take, and the number of people that you'll need to speak with before you find the right investor. Fundraising isn't just about raising money; it's about finding the right investor. And I would say that entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur, you can't get. You've got to be doggedly determined, and you've got to stay with it. You'll get doors slammed in your face, 30 times before one person says yes. And then I'd say when you do get an opportunity to raise money, when you do find that right investor, I think it's important to go big early. It's important to raise more money than you think you're going to need, because problems arise and things come up, and it's really important to make traction as quickly as you can, both for the company as well as for
and I think
building a place.
And I think, if I could interject, and
Sure.
I think the investor wants to see the passion in that entrepreneur really wanting to drive and believing in his or her product or service.
Absolutely.
Maybe that goes without saying, but some of the experience that we've had helping companies, that always sort of shines through. Boy, the time has really flown very fast. We're just about out of time, and I've really enjoyed the discussion, hearing about Cytovast and Noble, and really congratulate you on both of those ventures. Wish you the best of luck. Thank you for sharing your time with us today and with our viewing audience. I'd like to thank Mike Verrill for joining us as well, and for helping me co-host the show. So thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us. Our next guest on the upcoming show will be Dr. James Bannon with Vigilaire International. And I'd just like to remind our viewers that Money Matters is now available as an Audible podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, listed as Money Matters, the podcast for mobile devices. And the video is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. So with that, thank you and good night.